button you hit.
Okay. Okay, good evening, everybody. This is the Citywide Neighborhood Committee meeting at Wednesday, the 19th of October. We have several agenda items that are fairly important. But first off, I'd like to see if there's anybody on the web, on the Zoom, who would like to make any sort of comments. Now this, I don't know what to do next, but let's see.
Try to click the little participant button.
Yeah.
Right there, yes.
Elaine, is Peter coming?
And then in attendees, up top,
Participants? Oh, that's,
one to the right. You see the gray box where it says attendees? Yeah.
All right, yeah.
If you click
Okay.
that,
Right
that's
there.
who
Okay.
is our
Okay,
attendee.
only one. All right, so waiting for Kathleen to
If you
show.
hold on, go back to her and hover over.
Yeah,
Go back up to it, say allowed to talk. So that way
okay,
they're allowed to talk if they want.
okay, good. It shows a,
That's on their side. That's a mute button.
okay, that's theirs, right?
Yep.
Okay.
You cannot.
Someone who said, "Don't look at me." It seems like you know what you're doing.
Yes. Oh, step up.
I'm all right. I'm all right. You got it, Larry. I
Yeah,
trust.
I got it.
She'll
Thank you.
raise her hand if she has any
Yeah,
questions.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jenna, if you have any questions, you can raise your hand, you can speak. All right, we're waiting for Kathleen, but we'll start the meeting anyhow. The main purpose of this meeting is just to discuss National Night Out. I do have a few remarks that we can share, and then after that, we can talk a little bit about what the next moves would have to be, if you don't mind, okay? Now, if I can get this going, I'll be all right. There we go, all right. Traditionally, we've had the interaction between the first responders and the neighborhoods, of which now there were 16. There were 16 as of 2022. It was very successful, but there were expectations that were not met, so I agree with the chief very much about this. And of course, Sergeant, who did an outstanding job getting everyone together, as difficult as it is. But I wanted to point out that from our own records in 2012 and even before then, there's been no change in the number of neighborhoods, which is kind of surprising. I thought, I came in 2018, I thought, 17 or 18 was a lot, but apparently we've had 20 and even 21. But we had some mergers thanks to Elaine and then one other neighborhood, and that brought us down to 16. And I guess that was lucky that we did that. But I went back to 1994. There was an article in the Portsmouth Herald, and it was in 2004, and it suggested that this CNC, this is you can see that on the right, a flagship event that is the National Night Out, the citywide festival that brings Portsmouth police, firefighters, and others neighborhoods to various celebrations. So there was always that relationship going back to 1994, and I think Mayor Sorrell had actually started that at that time. And I started to look into this, and the numbers have been steady, although I think we have like 25 or 26 neighborhoods. For us, it's an important event in that it allows us to interact with neighborhood representatives. And before I get into the business of change, that's something that we've been doing for an awful long time, and that's why we're able to work with the police department on getting everyone registered and everyone participating. We were really lucky that. Oh, thank you, Kathy Bergeron. Yep, thank you, Kathy, for coming in. So I was just saying on this last slide, we started in 1994, and you may have this National Night Out and goes back even further, according to Scott, but the interrelationship between the citywide neighborhood and the police department goes back that far. I mean, I was kind of surprised. The mission of the the CNC has not changed. It's been always the same. We want to help neighbors get on, have them, give them a voice, give them a mouthpiece so they can interact with city agencies. And the police department was very helpful in that regard. And we didn't intend or have any way to take anything over. It was just a mutual relationship. It was Kathy who taught me how to do this, and I was warned severely not to screw up, because it would be very bad for my image, among other things. And so just looking at what we see, I estimate about 1,000 people participated this year. The estimate that you see there, 1,140, that came from the neighborhood representatives themselves. But we had about 1,000 people, which I was a bit surprised when I started to add it up. In some cases, the neighborhoods had more people than they estimated, and in some cases, when they didn't advertise, it was much less, you know. And then on the right-hand panel, it shows, I did this by ward, and it shows that in each ward except Ward 4, people were interested in maybe combining neighborhoods for this event, as Elaine has done in Ocean and 2 or 3 others that were there. But and I'm going to show a map on that. There is some sort of clusterings of those who might be willing to merge their parties on National Night Out, and it might be useful when the locations are picked. We'd be happy to help in that regard. But I can see that in Ward 1, Atlantic Highlands.
Atlantic Heights. Atlantic Heights.
Yeah, Heights would be interested in merging, not with all of their neighbors, but with most of their neighbors, around. And I'll show you a quote in a minute. But it just shows a clustering. However, it also shows that everything is very much spread out. And your experience, Chief, and mine with driving around with Sergeant Hood, and yours with the crime fighter, and all of us, it's quite a struggle to get it. And I can understand the person who made the complaint to the mayor that very few city councilors showed up at her neighborhood, and it's really what started this whole thing. What a mess. But they couldn't do it last year, and they couldn't do it in 2018. They hired a bus or a van, and that became somewhat of a political thing. It wasn't very pleasant when someone made some remarks, well, how come you're using city resources for that, et cetera, et cetera. It's always been a problem. But nevertheless, I want to just bring out a friend from Atlantic Heights. He viewed this as a chance for our community to get together, and he would certainly invite Big Rock Garden and Memorial Circle Garden. I don't know.
That's
I've
in
never.
Atlantic Heights. They already go there.
Yeah.
They already go there. That's in Atlantic Heights.
Yeah.
They were-
Well, no. Atlantic Heights. They're willing to merge. They expressed an interest in
okay.
Oh,
in
as long as
joining.
we go to their
joining-
space.
Yeah, and joining with other organizations. So I was a bit surprised at that. But notwithstanding that, I very much appreciate the chief's position, which I figure at the locations are so stretched out that it's almost impossible to meet any expectation unless you specifically ask for it. So the first bullet suggests that, and the second, from our conversation, Chief, I said that there'd be no visits and other block parties on the event date.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify on
Sure,
this, Larry.
absolutely.
These were discussions we were having. They weren't like set in stone guidelines that
I
I'm
thought it was,
providing you
I
to?
personally thought it was a decision.
Well, I can see that with what you have up there, but.
All right, well-
You know, those were discussions we were having. It was, our thing is, like, we want to be sincere in the neighborhoods we come to visit. We want to be able to spend some time with them. And as you stated, yes, it's been
Right.
going on for many, many years. But the attendants that are at these neighborhoods now, I mean, it's been more successful than we ever imagined. And it seems like every year it just gets bigger and bigger, which is great in one instance, but then for us as a police department and even the city and everybody else involved, we're having a hard time being able to be at all those locations and actually spend time with people, and more so than just stop in and say hi and bye so we can get to the next location. And we are spread out, and I spoke with Sergeant Hood, and he feels that using what we've been doing in the past, that we can probably still accommodate several more neighborhoods than what we had discussed there. But it's just more of just getting a focus and a plan on how that's going to go. And the expectation is you may not see everybody at all these neighborhoods, and some neighborhoods may see more than others, and some may, you know, only get one or two visitors just because of the sheer numbers we're dealing with. And I'm not even getting to the volume of, you know, whether it's 5 neighborhoods or 16 neighborhoods, but just the amount of people there. And we want to be able to talk with everybody that's there that wants to speak with us. And you can't do that in 10 minutes. So Sergeant Hood had a pretty good schedule mapped out on how we were going to do it and cover it. But that didn't meet everybody's expectations because, I mean, it's one thing with the police department, and the fire department is basically just using on-duty resources, and they get calls in the middle of this, and they had to go and respond. So that just takes
And
some out of the
you face
equation.
the same thing.
Yeah, we face the same thing. So I don't want to sound like we don't want to be in all these neighborhoods, because we do, but we only have the capabilities to be in so many places in such a small period of time.
Can I jump in on that? I think that, I feel like this year and the last year, I feel like it's gotten, we've never in the past had this many resources at each neighborhood. And I don't think there's a need to. I think, I know last year in my neighborhood, which, you know, I think you said we had 50-something people, we actually had more than that. We probably had closer to 80. And, but in past years, we've gotten, say, 1 fire truck, 1 policeman, and a backhoe. And that's all anybody expects. And I think that it's the expectation
Right.
to put out to the neighborhood leads and tell them to put it out, like, you know, if they get a call, they can't come. I think everybody understands that. They'd rather you be on a call than, you know, eating a brownie at our neighborhood meeting. So I just don't think that we need all those resources. I feel like we could do it, spread it out and have people just go to a couple. I've never seen so many as I did, which is great, which is awesome to see that many. But I don't think it's, if you're stretching resources thin, I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah, I think we can manage it. It's just,
Yeah.
what does that look like, managing it? And so,
Yeah.
getting ahead of it rather than, because it seems like it always comes down to the 11th hour where we're
Yeah,
trying to
it
cram
shouldn't
things
do
in.
that.
And that makes it difficult. And there's a lot of intangibles that go into what available resources are going to happen that day, because anything could happen in that day that draws us, fire department or DPW, away that we may not be able to
Yeah.
make all those commitments.
I feel like in the past, the DPW is the one that has the least, they have more of an idea of who they can send. They know what construction projects are going on, they know what's going on. So in the past, that's kind of where it started, is the DPW would put people out. And then fire and police kind of came out as much as they could. And I've always said, I'd rather the police spend the time with the neighborhoods with a lot of kids, and in particular at Gosling Meadows and Wamasett. I think that's where the mission of the National Night Out comes into play.
That's correct.
Those.
Right.
And as far as the city councilors, they've never come. I mean, they're in their own neighborhoods. They should be. I don't understand why that's an expectation, is that city councilors come.
I didn't make that, but I got an urgent call from one of our neighborhoods saying they were very disappointed. I didn't necessarily agree with with that person's position, but she went right to the mayor, and then next thing I heard the mayor saying, well, the Creek neighborhood had an additional party afterwards, and so I saw this as one way of addressing this, is separating the two, and which is what you were suggesting. But as you can see from the left-hand side, the South End, they don't have too many children, and others have a lot more, and some want the police and fire to be there, and others may not care.
Well, we've actually had neighborhoods ask not to send a fire truck or something because if there's somebody that's had some trauma or whatever, and that's fine.
I'll give you the.
Did you, before this year, did you sit and ask people what they wanted as?
Absolutely,
In-
absolutely, yeah. In fact, we had that also had the survey at the end about future expectations. But yes, they can state if they wanted a SWAT or if they wanted a
Yes.
police dog or.
And did you keep track of who got it?
Yes,
So you
we
can-
did.
Here you can say, don't bother.
No,
doing that.
they were part of the database, and we shared that database with everybody, you know.
Yes, and we did, as you were asking, we did share the spreadsheet
Yeah.
of what everybody wanted, and I tried to, I updated it before the event, and I sent everything to Sergeant Hood and to the fire chief and DPW, so.
Yeah.
So yes, we did make them aware.
And I took that into account. This
Of
is this is the actual schedule used
Yeah.
for 2022 National Night Out. And I took that into account when I assigned, I identified what resources. We had the crime scene van, we had a K-9 officer, we had 2 motorcycles, we had the drone team van, with the CERT vehicle, and then we had patrol units that were out on patrol. And I did take into account the survey and who had kids and tried to, if there was a specific request and there were only, I think I recall there were only like 3 or 4 neighborhoods that had a specific request.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
Like they had a
Yeah.
lot of kids, so I tried to, like the motorcycle cop, kids like to sit on the motorcycle, put the helmet on, stuff like that. Crime scene van, they're very interactive, and so I did identify those, and I do have a record of where they went, assuming they all stuck to the schedule. I know probably a couple guys probably went to maybe 2 different neighborhoods or whatnot, if the time permitting, depending on how things went. But I did take into account all those things, and I do have a record of it, as well as a kind of a debrief for, whether I'm doing it next year or somebody else, so we have a record, so.
Oh, that's good.
But it all kind of comes down to, if we're going to have, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we have 6 specific teams, plus the patrol officers, and the patrol officers kind of added a double up, like, hey, here's the schedule, try and go to one of the neighborhoods that you see a blank, the blank spot, so we don't have them going at the same, section and time period, and as far as coordinating with other departments, I don't know how feasible that would be, but no, I did take a lot of time into making sure that we were spread out and that, neighborhoods were happy and that they got to see something, directed towards, what they requested.
I wonder what, the optimal number of neighborhoods would be.
Yeah,
So-
that's a good question.
I was going to ask that question.
So is this the part that's kind of open for discussion?
Yeah.
Yes.
So in my mind, just for some background for National Night Out and what other towns have always done, around here, it's a lot of one location. So last year I said this, Andover, Mass does a great job. They have one location, 2,500 people. They get, the helicopter to come out, a whole bunch of kids, food and everything. Greenland does the same. Greenland has about 1,000 to 1,200 people. We also go there. York does it. Exeter has been doing really good over the last couple of years. Single location with, 700.
And what about Kittery?
Kittery doesn't do one.
Okay.
Not yet. So if they'd probably go to York and maybe do a merge party. They talked about doing that.
Where would we even have parking for that many people?
Well, I don't know if we do one location.
Yeah.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
I'm looking at, our conversation was talking about the 5 wards, but
Yeah.
like an example is like Dundero School. They do a great, it's a festivity
And
party
that's
out
They
there.
do.
Elwyn Park.
And, the other, Woodlands, that's both of them
Woodlands,
together,
yeah.
which is great, because that's that's a huge population.
Yeah, I guess just to finish the point was, the single locations, it's easier to manage resources. For Crime Stoppers, we're only a couple people. We can only get to 9 neighborhoods max. But even if it was 5, that's still a lot more manageable. And if it was 1 per ward at each of the schools, like Dundero, the middle school / library, Fire Station 2, picking those doesn't need to be done today. But I think that would be a lot more manageable. You'd have a lot more assets, resources at each place. I would personally be in favor of, going down to a per
Well,
ward.
I think it's very challenging, and I've been thinking about it too, about, how we need to get down to a point that it's manageable, and without, on the other hand, losing too much. I mean, I've been doing this for a little bit, but there are a lot of young people, and they may have a slightly different idea. They may like you were suggesting, 5. And we know that there's a hub down in the Fire Station 2, and Dundero School would be also probably an excellent hub of the 5. And the other 3 are, I can't comment, but I could see something in Prescott Park or something to that effect, to really attract people.
Middle school would be an awesome option. And then what's the?
In all the schools, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Little Harbor's got a huge field.
Yeah.
And I mean, every community is different, and, we're going to do this for our community. What we feel best is, we have a good problem. We have too many people that want to come out and have
It is.
time with the police
It's
department.
a victim of its
So
success.
it's
Very good way of putting it.
I mean, and that's the way I look at it, is like we've been more than successful, and it's gotten to the point now where it's not just neighborhoods doing it, but every neighborhood wants to have their own, because this is the one time that they can get all their neighbors together and they get to see each other and meet their new neighbors, which is serving part of the purpose. The other purpose is, for us as police department to get out and meet our neighbors, and that's the part that sometimes we're having a little bit of trouble with, is because we don't have that many resources to be able to get to all those different neighborhoods and actually be able to spend some quality time with people. Like at Dundero, there's 1,000 people out there, and all the kids are out there. We want to be able to talk to every kid that wants to talk to us. We don't want to. Sorry, we're at a time that we got to leave, and that's where it. I said we want to be sincere and not just hi, bye. And how can we do that and still accommodate everybody?
That's what we're trying to think about, all right? And I think that some cases, I'm not sure. I think Four Tree Island, which is the Friends of the South End, they're out there, and very few children, but the police and fire and everyone else love to go out there for food. See? But is it really important for their particular function to have visits?
Well,
I know the politicians would think
how is
differently.
one neighborhood not as important as any other neighborhood? To
Yeah.
whether or not there's 2 kids or 100 kids or just families. We want to be able to serve our whole entire community.
For the record, it's not just kids that like to see the
Right.
trucks and everything.
Yeah.
The adults enjoy it as well.
It's where their tax dollars are going.
Right.
It's to
Yes.
explain, the SWAT van, to talk to
Oh, yeah.
everybody about it. There was more adults that were.
Yeah, that is
Absolutely.
true. And it's so
Adults
people
enjoy
can
it,
see
too.
what we have to offer, what we do, what our department does. And, it's a whole range of people that we want to meet. It's not just specific to kids. It's not specific to adults. So we're trying to find a happy medium.
Pull your microphone a little
Oh,
closer.
yes. Oh, sorry. So what I was thinking about is, and I know I'm not on the committee anymore, but I was involved in it
Actually,
forever.
you are
Oh, that's right.
ex officio.
There's a couple things. We could probably get the number down, but I think in talking to people, I think it would have to be walkable. So for instance, my neighborhood is Wybird. To go to, say, Little Harbor School and maybe Cliff and Walker Bungalow go there too. And Richards Ave didn't have one this year, but they usually do if they went. So I think you'd have to be careful. So that's that. Some of the other neighborhoods are more challenging for it to be walkable. So maybe the walkable ones that you could have a one area that they could walk to, you combine them. But the neighborhoods that they can't walk somewhere, maybe you continue to have that in their neighborhood. I would hate I just think that the attendance will go down if somebody has to get their kids in a car at dinner time to go someplace. I think that is a little bit of a just too much of a barrier. So, but if you're all leaving the neighborhood together to go someplace, that's something else.
Yeah, I was
And
think-
it is also something we could try for a year.
Right.
And see
Yeah,
if it
it
works.
doesn't have to be set in stone, so.
doesn't, no.
I mean, and it's also up to your neighborhood committees, because
Yeah.
some neighborhoods are better organized than others, and they get
Yes,
enough
that's
volunteers where they can
Yeah.
make it work, where other people, there's one or two people doing everything.
That's
Yeah.
true.
That's right,
Yes.
Chief.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
that's exactly. It's so, yeah, if the neighborhood committees, or the lead
The
for whoever that
associations,
is,
yeah.
if they say they think that, everybody would have a feeling for how their neighbors are going to react to that. And then maybe this year, we try it, and then we do something with Portsmouth 400, which I talked to Karen Kennard about briefly, trying to do something with that, too.
If we, I mean, I think we have to do a little more thinking about this, but if we could probably focus on 3 or 4 major hubs, as you were saying, I mean, if it's walkable.
Yeah.
Is the middle school walkable? And you're going to get, and you may get more than just neighborhoods. You will get people who don't consider themselves in any neighborhood, and they'll just show up.
That could be too.
And it could be a big success. I mean, I thought of that too, that people in the downtown area, would walk to middle school or walk to, hypothetically, Prescott Park. You can get 1,000. You can get quite a few, you can get several thousand participants in National Night Out just by doing something like that. I mean, it'd be more than just neighborhood associations. It would be,
Yeah.
And I'd say, just to piggyback on both of you guys' comments, with talking about kids, we live in Ward 3, we're over in Middle. We have a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old. But, where does my wife, I'm obviously McGruff, I don't get
Yeah,
to do anything.
yeah.
But where does my wife go? She goes Dondero. Why? Because it has the most things for kids to do,
Yeah.
So Fire Station 2, there's a good amount of kids over there too. So she went,
Yeah.
I think, to both of those. But even though we don't live in Dondero, that's still where we went, because that's where there's stuff for kids to do. And I think if we did consolidate, it would be key to have, activities. And the more activities that you have, the more people that you can attract.
Though, I agree that would be great, but we have to remember that this is a 3-hour event, or it's supposed to be 2.
It's only 2 hours.
Yeah, 2 hours.
That's what is counting.
And, I mean, we've never had a rain date before. We have a rain date. I think the rain date is really
we
tough.
could dump that.
I
mean,
think to
but
dump a rain
I
date,
took a chance
because
on
I
that,
can't-
but because sometimes the
I
rain
can't-
is variable, but.
We
we've
always
been
do it
having-
like a week out. Like we just say
Yeah,
rain
we've
dates on
never
this
done-
day.
We've had to
We could
cancel it
drop that,
before.
like,
Oh,
really,
God.
like,
Not very often.
Yeah.
But we have had to, actually, I don't even know if it's ever, the full thing has got rained out, maybe a
No, I
thunder
think
shower
we
or
had
something.
a quick storm pass
Yeah,
through.
yeah.
8 o'clock, I know we
Oh, yeah.
stopped. Remember,
we
at 8
stopped,
o'clock?
and then it came down. It was.
Oh, yeah, that's
Oh, yeah.
right. I
timing
remember,
this-
yes.
This year was,
And that
the timing
happened
was.
maybe right the year before
Last year.
COVID too, that happened right at the end. So that activities, I just worry that we don't want to put so much into it or make it too complicated for the neighborhood leads, because the majority of the neighborhoods, there's 1 or 2 people doing everything.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I know.
No, I mean, but if we had, like I said, if we did 5 locations in different ward areas where there are locations where you have an indoor-outdoor option, that could help as well.
And you could
If you're using the schools.
we could still do like the 5 locations, the wards, and still not lose the identity of your neighborhood. Like I'm picturing like, you go to Epcot at Disney and you can go like right to all the different countries. Like you could go you know, New Franklin School could be your Epcot, and then each neighborhood could have a pop-up, maybe,
Table.
and maybe each neighborhood, you know, represented like an activity or something like that. One could, you know, kids could paint, I don't know, a wooden figure, and one, the kids could make a origami, or, I don't know, but you could still represent your neighborhood, but reduce it to these locations which would get, more of the police resources and less of a burden on the fire as they're working, and you could get more in one location, and you could probably, get bigger from there. I mean, I don't necessarily have a problem if we want to keep it 16 neighborhoods, but you're spreading it thin, and we can't guarantee, and you're still keeping the idea of National Night Out is not only building the relationship between, law enforcement or the first responders in the community. It's also a resource for the neighborhoods to get to know each other.
Yeah.
Not just the neighborhood that you're within, but also like the neighborhoods nearby you, and sharing information about maybe problems going on. And so I like the idea of the 5 wards, not just because it's, more manageable for the resources, but I think there's a way to still have your neighborhood identity by having it in a consolidated community. But that's...
So I was just going to say something that I'm just throwing it out as a suggestion, but really, is there any possibility that it can be a couple of days instead of just one? And so have everybody in Ward 5 and whatever parties they have normally do that.
So
And
National Night Out is only one night a year.
for the August 2nd.
Across the country.
Yeah,
It's
the
across the
first
country.
Tuesday of the
Okay.
month, yeah.
Always the same.
There's
But that
some
doesn't,
towns that do it different nights, isn't it? If something.
but for the nationalnightout.org, like everybody does it the same night. But to the point for everybody, is there an opportunity to still have another night that is just like a neighborhood block party night?
Yes.
That is different than National Night?
Yeah, and that's the conversation that we had with Larry is, like, any neighborhood can organize a block party, and there are a lot of neighborhoods that already do organize block parties, and if we're made aware of it, we will gladly stop in and say hello. It doesn't have to be National Night Out. So those were some of the suggestions we made.
No,
because-
that has some merit. I mean, I'm not ruling out this at all. I mean, everything here is workable. If you work it, we can survey people. I mean, we can survey neighborhood reps. I'll give you an example of one thought I have. That's Prescott Park. You advertise Prescott Park, and there's going to be police here and fire and other things, and maybe 1 or 2 parties. I don't know. But if you advertise enough, that could be a location.
But
It's in the
it's
city.
the arts festival. I just look at our parks and everything else that's going on. That's my fear, is Prescott Park has the arts festival going on.
Oh, well, obviously, that was a hypothetical. I mean, that could be.
has a zillion baseball games. Like, I don't know, that's the only thing it would have to be very early planned,
Yeah, no,
like, within the next month or so. To put the schedules out.
oh, okay.
That
use
is my, fear of that.
I use that just as a hypothetical.
I'm sorry.
Because it would be like an ideal if it
Yeah.
would work. But the notion is that if you had a hub, you could advertise, you could promote the activities going on in the hub. You would get neighborhoods there, some, and you'd also get other residents in the city, okay? I mean, that would be one way to do it. It moves slightly away from the idea of the neighborhood and the first responder visits and the kids and that. And so I worry about that component of it. And if we can figure out a way of bridging this, 5 or 6, it doesn't matter, and then there would be some neighborhoods that would have parties at other times, that's fine. I know that Oriental Gardens, they have their parties at very different times. I asked them if they were interested in National Night Out. They were not. And I can't speak for the Friends of the South End, whether they would, they probably wouldn't care because they've had Fort Tree Island since the records that I looked at, going back 20 years, 15 years, so they've been there a long time. Whether they would really, I think they always like to invite police and fire and city councilors there, and a lot of people go there. Yeah.
Yeah, my apologies for, I had another
No,
meeting.
thank you for
that
coming.
Ran late. I think, having talked to the chief, we can't, it's not possible for him to do 19 things in one night. It's just, we can't ask that of our police force. What about the idea, I'm just tossing this out, I don't know if you may have discussed it, but if you did, August is National Night Out Month, and we did one ward at a time.
Well, National Night Out is just one night a year.
Yeah.
It's just national.
Correct.
It's Tuesday.
But if you
Just
had,
Portsmouth's night out.
Yeah, Portsmouth Night Out. Yeah,
if you
sure.
had, the first week of August, Ward 1 did their, on a Thursday night, they did all theirs. Then the next week in August, Ward 2 were.
So for Crime Stoppers, I could hit 5 wards easy. We do 9, that's like our max. 5, I think, is good. If they were big events, like we spend a lot of time at Dondero, just because there's a lot of people at Dondero. There's a lot of kids, there's a lot of stuff to give out. I like that number, and I feel like it's manageable in a single evening. For us, like, it's all 100% volunteer, so to try to get someone for every single week in August, for us, it wouldn't work so well to have it multiple days. For PDs, I don't know how you guys are.
Well, I just speak for manning it. I mean, even this, we had one slot that didn't go unfilled. We would have had one more officer to go around, but it didn't go unfilled because, it's August, people have vacations or people are sick and whatnot. So, and we put it on different nights, and we risk. I mean, certainly we have the on-duty resources, but we could probably manage it like anything. But I think it would make it a little bit more difficult if we have it like 5 different nights or.
Agreed.
So it's kind of, it's the workability of 5, or let's, using that as a, I call it a goal, because it kind of makes sense that you do 1 per ward. And then the neighborhood relationship, trying to work something in that regard. That's really the key right there. It would be very nice if all the neighborhoods that wanted to participate in National Night Out to show up at the 5 locations. That would be very, very nice. That would be ideal. But I don't think it would work right away. And I don't know, I thought, well, what if we were to experiment? But we're experimenting on the neighborhood relationships with themselves as well as law enforcement and fire department and so forth. So there's a risk associated with that. And I kind of worry about that too. So there has to be some way of bringing this together that makes sense. I mean, we know the sense that you're bringing to it, Chief and Sergeant Hood, that it's not manageable to do 16 or 17. I mean, it's stretching hard, and you have resource problems already, and you don't need any more. And who said anything about things getting better next year or the year after? Maybe they will, but that won't change the matter. The fact is, they're stretched now. They probably, I can't say, Kathy, whether they were stretched before, but they may have been right out there.
It was a lot less there.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe we could just do it with a lot less resources.
So just another question or idea, is it a lot, playing the opposition, I've asked a couple of years to do consolidation stuff, and the answer's always been the same from the neighborhoods. They like to know who their neighbors are, who are the guys that are closest to them. They don't really care for the big thing, because getting to know who's on your street is important to them, and I get it and I respect it. And is it possible maybe to do like 4th of July block parties or Memorial Day weekend block parties with all the neighborhoods? So it's, them still getting to know their neighborhood intimately, but having National Night Out just be a separate event that's different than, block party night, that allows us to, have the best of both worlds. You still have the opportunity in your neighborhood in the summer to connect with the people that are closest to you, and also still have the best experience for National Night Out.
I think that that's a thought, if the CNC wanted to encourage all these neighborhoods to put on their own block parties.
Yeah.
And you guys, really encouraged it and scheduled it and helped them. And then National Night Out becomes more of what the mission of National Night Out is, with the relationships with the police and the first responders.
I think that's a great idea because, and I said it, I don't know who I said it to, but I said it to someone that, just because if we were to consolidate, to your point, it doesn't mean that any neighborhood can't have their own block party.
Oh,
I know
sure.
already this year, I saw, at least one email where, we were notified that a neighborhood got permission from the city manager to shut down a street for a block party. So like people can do it. People can still have their block parties. So I honestly, I think that would be a great idea. And not just say, hey, you have the ability, but to encourage it. And so they feel like they got their block party out. And if you let us know, like certainly on duty, like we'll go. And it won't be the same, we won't have, the bells and the whistles, like we came out for National Night Out, but like, we'll still go and visit block parties. Or I suppose we could do that, but it almost like if that's a preparation for, all right, this is practice round and the National Night Out is going to be.
Yeah, I think my fear is just being involved in these, block parties since I've lived here is I really see what it does for a neighborhood and it strengthens a neighborhood. I mean, my neighborhood has had a lot of turnover, especially after COVID. We got to get out in the street. There's still people thanking me for putting that on because they didn't know their neighbors. They had kids meeting each other, and I know other neighborhoods were the same. It kind of helps you check in on your elderly neighbors. What do you need? That type of thing. And that's the thing I don't want to lose.
I think that's really
So
important to keep.
I just think that that's so important in Portsmouth. Having the opportunity to drive around to the neighborhoods, and I mean, as you know, they're all really unique, and they have traditions. They do cakewalks or bike parades or something, and you don't want that to go away.
Yeah.
So if we could do it in a way like that, but, the committee would have to probably be.
That's
really-
something
So I
that
just wanted
Chief
to-
Newport
So
actually talked
that's what,
about.
I mean, National Night Out became so successful because it did exactly
Yeah.
that. So but it's gotten to a point now where the burden's been put on our backs because everybody likes it and everybody's National Night Out that our particular day has become the day for all neighborhoods to come out and do that, enjoy that. So, but I think we're at a point now where there's enough neighborhoods that have been created that enjoy the block party
Yep.
theme that they could do it on another night that not necessarily National Night Out. So when we do have National Night Out, maybe we can consolidate to some other neighborhoods because other neighborhoods have already had their
Yeah.
block party and they're not using us as the draw to get people together because there's several neighborhoods that have been doing it for year after year and now that are established that can do it. But for some of the newer areas and newer neighborhoods that need to get up off the ground, they join National Night Out. So they
And I-
can establish that community relationship.
Actually, one of the neighborhoods, Maple Haven, recently restarted their neighborhood association. And when I met with them, they mentioned that, two of them mentioned that they enjoyed the National Night Out at the fire station, but they can also see themselves doing their own neighborhood parties. So, I mean, they're definitely open to that. And in the meeting with you and Karen, you had mentioned, of course, consolidating the parties, the NNO parties, but also that the neighborhood parties, the neighborhood association parties, could be spread out, maybe throughout the summer, and then each week, a neighborhood could have a party, and then you guys could, come by, stop by, visit the neighborhoods. So we would have to work with the leaders in the neighborhoods and talk to them about that.
I think it's kind of, for it not to go away in the summer, it would have to be when is your block party? Not,
Yes,
are you going
exactly.
to have a block
Yeah.
party? It has to be
Yeah,
Memorial Day, 4th of July.
yeah.
well, those
Those are tough. Those are
a
tough.
random
days, yeah.
Tuesday night,
Yes,
it
yeah.
should get the most people during the week, but it has
Yeah.
to, that's
I
the
guess we'll
only
just
thing.
suggest.
Yeah, I think that's the part that I don't want to see go away because I feel like it has really strengthened
Well-
people and people have met, but there's no reason why you can't do two. Maybe it'll be even more. It'll
Yeah,
be
that's
better.
what Maple Haven actually is that's what they want to do, is become more united, and that's why they restarted the association.
Do you-
Yeah,
do you think-
they just restarted on the 11th of October.
So do you think that you need, of course, the police is a draw and McGruff is a draw. Do you think that the parties would survive without?
they
I
could.
think
I
they
think
would.
so.
I think if you have the right leaders in place, for the neighborhoods, there's a lot of people that want to get out and get to know their neighbors. And
They're doing it so much to meet each
Yeah.
other and spend time with each
yeah,
other.
I think it'll survive on its own.
I think so too. I agree. That's what I'm seeing from.
One of the things I just wanted to bring up to you guys, what we talked about at the Crime Stoppers Board, this was a year or two ago. And again, we're just here to support you guys. Whatever you guys decide, by all means, go for it. But we said if National Night Out was a single location, we'd be very happy to try to help with sponsorship and organization of that, and then maybe even do like a secondary fireworks night like 4th of July, if it was consolidated to one. Would be happy to do that. So just wanted to.
I've spoken to people in different neighborhoods, and really, if it's not walkable,
Yeah.
then they're not interested. These are, a lot of them with young kids, and
Yeah, I just
just
wanted-
want to walk out the door,
Just
and,
put it out there to let you guys know that Crime Stoppers is open to it.
okay.
Either one of you are welcome to speak. Subject, you can sit down on the side here if you want. You're very welcome to participate in this.
So I guess the next step is, as a committee, if you guys sit down, look at what the surveys said, I would resurvey these are just my suggestions, resurvey the leads, or not even survey
Well, I
them.
was
I
thinking-
would reach out to them and talk to them.
Oh, no, we
Call
would
them.
probably want to reach out to them, you're right. The surveys that we did, and this is the second year that we did the survey about, would you like a single location, or would you like to merge
Yeah.
with other
Yeah.
neighborhoods? We had like 7 responses this year. Last year was like 5. So, I mean, maybe there is some change. But beside that, I like the idea of studying this a little more, certainly on the survey, and ask them about the block parties. So what I hear so far is something that's useful for us. I'll call it, for the moment, a model. Is that we would have approximately 5 locations, and the 5 locations would be central points. Any neighborhood association could have a party at those locations, so there'd have to be enough room for that in the usual way, like Dundero and the fire station 2. And if an association wants block parties at another time, the CNC could be more than willing to facilitate in making arrangements with the police department and so forth. And it would facilitate, and we understand that.
If they even want that.
Yeah, they may, if they want it, exactly.
want it, yeah.
And they don't have to have it, but we would facilitate, and we would keep them on the list, and we would at least interact with those neighborhood reps, which is something that we need to do. We need to keep up with those individuals, and because they represent a neighborhood of hundreds of people,
So one thing maybe to keep the identities of each of the individual neighborhoods, if you did decide to consolidate, is maybe have a friendly little competition at each of those, saying, my neighborhood has the best food. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're bringing one of the best things for kids.
Best music,
And have
best
it,
activity.
have a little fun, for the neighborhoods in the ward, and then the wards against each
Yeah.
other. Crime Stoppers be happy to be a judge for the best food.
All of that.
I think we have a few judges over and members
if
of
we
the
did
Blue.
with-
Police?
Very many volunteers.
And there's some things you could do with, if they had the individual neighborhoods. I was thinking, if people wanted to, they could do posters of what their neighborhood means to them,
Yeah,
and kind of put it on a table or whatever, because Portsmouth 400 is not just about the history, it's what's happening right now in Portsmouth too. So kind of looking at that,
That's an interesting idea. I saw you on the email. I have contacts with Susan in
Yep.
Portsmouth 400, so next, 2024, certainly there could be some activity there that kind of merges that. But at least if we get the model straight, we can work with the model to see if we can, if it is workable, more workable than not.
and then Do you guys have a date that you would like to see what the schedule is? Like if you, I mean, say it's going to be August, the first week in August. I think that's good to have to work back on
I mean,
too.
we know when National Night is going to be. April, May, Larry reached out to me. We started planning. We had a couple meetings. I joined a meeting with Elaine and others about, the needs of the community. I mean, June, July, I mean, as we get into July, certainly I'd like to have, but if we at least know how many neighborhoods about
Yeah.
rounding May, that would help a lot with planning planning and budgeting, like, how many officers, how many different teams, because I have to reach out to detectives for the crime scene. I have to, drone team guys for the drone van, CERT guys, and they have to coordinate the Bearcat with the other communities that participate in CERT. So, May, June, how many neighborhoods, and then, we can, as we get closer, it's not too hard to put this together. But we do need to give time for officers to sign up and then find out actually how many officers we're going to get as we get closer. So,
Because I think that's a challenge with the neighborhoods, because you always have the neighborhoods at the last minute that say, oh, we're going to do it.
And we
So
did-
if
We
you
only
Could
had
have a
one.
cutoff, yes.
We
Yeah.
only had one that signed up at the last minute, West End.
yeah.
Because,
Yeah,
I mean,
Weston.
and then if you, no matter how many we have, to give a hard date, and that,
Yeah.
that's good you only had one, because in the
Yeah.
past, I've had more than that at the last minute have said, oh, I'm going to have a block party, so it's sort of,
It's like the same neighborhoods from 2021 had one this year as well. Yeah.
One thing for the PDs next year, coordinate with Greenland. They had the National Guard fly the helicopter over their National Night Out. It would have been like a 2-minute trip for that helicopter to go over Portsmouth too.
Right?
Oh,
So talk to the
cool.
Greenland guys.
All right.
I was like, oh, dude, why isn't the helicopter going to Portsmouth too?
yeah.
So
Yeah, that would be real cool.
That would
Well,
be
let
really
me, I'd like to just pursue this a little bit more, maybe in like a subcommittee or a small group to, just to formulate the more so much the promotional idea. There's one thing that we'd like to know about the five. If 5 locations appears, the one for each ward appears to be equitable in that way, then you don't favor one ward over the other, not that this is a competition. But that's certainly what I would call the model, is to pick 5 locations. Secondly would be to define what you're going to do at each location, including possibility like what happens in Fire Station 2 in Dundero. You have multiple neighborhoods have parties at these locations. I think that's fine. And then 3, the promoting of block parties and our facilitation in contacting the police department and maybe the fire department to see if our first responders, to see if we can arrange for them for a brief visit. So it could be any time, and other than National Night Out. So I'd like to kind of tie that into like a bundle, a package, and see if we can come up with an idea that everyone agrees with. Chief?
That sounds good to me.
Okay, all right. So with that, does anyone else have anything to say about National Night Out and block parties?
Well, I would just say, well, first off, anybody who's running for city council loves having them all on one night, because I shake so many hands in one night. But I think this discussion's been great, because, Kathy, I think you're right. The neighborhoods want to get together and know each other. So whatever we do, I think we want to support and facilitate and encourage that. And if it's friendly competition, if it's contests, if it's, the city maybe provides something to help make your block party happen, anything we can do. And that seems the heart of the experience for people.
So
I tend to
that's a
agree.
question on the 16 neighborhoods, but how many different committees do you have? Because, I mean, if the
5.
committees, 5, so if the committees coordinate an area with each one of their wards,
Yeah.
I mean, kind of draw the people into their, or at least coordinate with the different neighborhoods that are in their wards to try to work on facilitating
So I
one or
think
maybe two spots.
the neighborhoods, as you guys, we've had the challenge, some of them have really very strong committees that they meet and they elect officials. And then there's, me that has an email list, and that's it.
No, that's right.
And just
That's
hopes that
correct.
somebody helps. And that's probably the majority of them, which, but it all works. And some of the ones that are more, I'm trying to think, because now Maple Haven and
Maple
Sherburne
Haven.
is pretty organized.
They were, we haven't had contact with Sherburne for some time, for
Yeah, I was just
2
looking at
years.
the list because Colonial Drive used to be, there used to be a spot
They used to be a big one. I'm so
Yeah,
surprised they
they
didn't do
did
it
it
this
last
year.
year.
That could just be, Aaron could have been out of town or something, and he's really a driver over there. But some of them could, some of those committees that are formed might want to take a leadership.
Yes, some of the leaders are looking for people to take over. And I think
luck.
maybe that's what's happening with Sherburne, right?
Yeah,
So we'll reach out to them and see if,
and we have in the past too, and
yeah, we do continue to reach out to them, but we will speak with them about the possibility of, the
that makes it
consolidated
21.
editing.
22 neighborhoods that we have.
We're heading in the wrong direction.
Yes, I know.
I looked back, and I think that the most we had one year, we actually did have, I think, 21 neighborhoods, which was
Yeah,
ridiculous.
that's a lot.
But not all of them had resources go. We had a few, Rogers Street used to do one,
Yes.
which is
And then they had a
small, and
private
they just
party.
did it in somebody's backyard and said, don't bother
That's right.
sending anybody. And then
That's correct.
there was one other that used to do that too. I get, like, I don't know if 5 wards is the actual number. I don't know if there's some that, it's just that we have to look at a map and look at locations to see what works,
Yeah.
what's
and
kind of
that's also,
natural.
Like, maybe even if we get it done.
Yeah,
in
no,
two
I quite
locations.
agree.
Yeah.
Some of the
Well,
ones.
Yeah, if you had 7 maybe instead of 5,
Yes,
that's still a
because-
lot better than 17.
Because Ward 3 is really big.
It is, and it's not
So
all
we would,
walkable.
yeah, so I would suggest like 2 different.
This part,
Two
like where I am
different-
in
yeah.
Ward 3, I'm more likely to probably go to something close to Ward 2 versus the people out on Ocean, probably
Yeah.
more likely to go to Dondero.
Exactly, and then Ward 1 is pretty central, but, Ward 2 kind of even spans a little bit, but that might be doable. And Ward 3 is also a little bit of a challenge.
Ward 3 is huge, Jeff.
It's big, it's huge, yeah.
It's kind of a long, skinny
Yes.
one with a lot of highways. So, but I mean, I think that with a lot of looking at a map and diligence, I think.
Yeah,
we could probably
I
get
think
it
you
done.
could easily put a couple pins in that and look,
I've been
I think the
looking.
schools probably, if, you're just looking for ideas, the schools are probably good places to start.
Well, I mean, and your neighborhood doesn't necessarily have to go to your ward party.
No,
Yeah,
it's just
no, they
whatever's
could just go to the
closest
closest. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Or
because
whoever
Ward
has
3
the
and
best.
4, kind of, they could kind of, maybe even at community campus, you could have something, or,
Okay.
yeah, so.
All right, so why don't I, anyone who wants to sit on this, I call it a subcommittee, would Sergeant would like to volunteer from the police department just to shed, just to- as a representation?
Would I like to volunteer?
Sure
Chief?
you would.
And Kathy, I think you've had some
Yeah.
very good ideas, and,
I'll help out.
okay, and Elaine, and that should, that should do it.
I'll be on it.
And you're all,
I wanna
you'll
be
be
on it,
welcome
too.
to those too.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, it can be the whole committee thing as well. But
absolutely.
in any case, I think we want to have some ideas put forward, maybe by the end of the year. And that will give us enough time to plan how we're going to announce what we want to do and to have it successful and continually announce it going forward and be on a very positive spin.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we want to do. Continue this concept of the neighborhood and neighborhood parties, which is very important, and then the police fire and first responders on National Night Out as a second. But I think if we're involved in both, then we're able to keep our contacts with the neighborhood representative, and that's what we want to do. Okay? All right, so well, why don't we close that discussion? I'm going to, because of we don't have a lot of people here, suspend most of the rest of the agenda, but there are two folks here. Would you here to speak about some problem or some issue that you'd like to, or something that you'd like to address? A neighborhood issue or something that bothers you?
No, more with just an interesting thought on, or interesting situation on National Night Out. I'm on Cliff Road Walker Bungalow.
Oh,
I've been
yeah.
doing the organizing for the last 2 years. Corinne did it for the, 7 years before that. One of the challenges we've had is because of the neighborhood and the length of the streets and that sort of stuff, now that I've done it the last 2 years, and I look at the numbers and ours is really low because it's kind of the Cliff Road group and a few from Walker Bungalow. But I've ended up doing flyers to about 45 houses, and because of the whole Sagamore sewer system, I've also been spearheading, trying to get everyone knowing what's going on with their sewer. If you don't know, we're getting a $20 million sewer system in our neighborhood, which we're gonna be paying probably $10,000 to $15,000 for each residence to be able to put it in. And so I've been just getting the information out to everyone, so that email that I have is about 65 to 70 people in that whole area, from Sagamore Avenue, Cliff Road, Walker Bungalow, over on the other side of of Sagamore Creek. So like I said, 65 to 75 emails going out. And yet, if you look at the numbers, we still only had the people on Walker Bungalow, right along Cliff Road and Cliff Road. And I'm just really baffled. When I handed out the flyers to people and talked to them in person, all the way down Walker Bungalow, all the way on Sagamore and the like, and they still don't end up coming. And I don't know why. So I just don't know whether it's you're talking about some of the neighborhoods that have huge turnout. I don't know if it's a different neighborhood, so a different
I think you might have the
dynamics.
same percentage of people showing up as some of the other neighborhoods.
Good to know.
Like if
Yeah.
you,
So
if you
people are doing
counted,
hundreds of
yeah, if you,
notifications and.
like my neighborhood, it's over 200 households. So I'm
Okay.
saying
So the
that,
ratio
if
may
you
be
looked at
the
the
same, it's just,
ratio, you
okay.
might be
Some
about the
neighborhoods.
same, and it can change drastically year to year.
And ours is always the same core people. So it's just interesting.
So
I
if
like the
we-
idea of
yeah, if we-
sort of doing because we've also talked about just doing block parties, with our core group. And it has definitely brought the neighbors together so they know each other, and we end up talking to the new neighbors and bringing the new neighbors in, and so they understand what's going on. And, every neighborhood is different, and ours has a lot of huge amount of transition right now, not only with people, but also because of the sewer system going in is having a huge impact on what's going on in the neighborhood and new development. And we live on a dirt road now, so we've been living on a dirt road for about 2 months or so. But,
Are you Lenore?
What's that?
What is your name?
Sheridan Lloyd.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's right. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. So it's been interesting on being able to get, people up to speed about what's going on, and the National Night Out has been a great way to pull people in, and so they understand what's going on. And if they're new to Portsmouth, to be able to meet the police department, different components, like we ended up having the drone group this
Oh,
year. It was
cool.
unbelievable, fantastic. We didn't even know that there was a drone division in Portsmouth. So that's where one of those things, it's really good to be able to end up, even if it's, every year we get somebody different. And McGruff. Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if you've ever been to Cliff Road.
No, we did, that's, part of the reason for consolidation, with 19 neighborhoods, I'm lucky to hit 10 of them, 9's.
Yeah, and it's one of those
So-
things, if you end up doing a rotation, you end up like the drone group this year. We didn't get them in the past, which is great. And
Yeah.
we've gotten what's the armored vehicle?
Bearcat.
SWAT.
Bearcat. We've gotten that before, which is again a really eye-opener to know what sort of protection we have with the police department. It's being able to see the brand new garbage truck. It's fascinating too. So it is a good thing in that aspect. I'm being able to get the rotation of all these different things, and I'm just hoping that if it ends up going more centralized, that we don't end up losing that. Again, the discussion with, it's gotta be walkable, but if it's a 10-minute walk away and you've got small children, or even if you don't, and you're carrying food with you,
Right.
who's gonna be walking 10 or 15 minutes with food in their arms?
What would be,
With the
That's a
discussion,
question.
we were saying just
Yeah.
have block parties still, but just
Yeah.
different nights, and have national night out
And so
versus
then-
a block party
So you
night.
could still get your neighborhood together.
Correct,
That's
and I
important
agree
to
with
us.
that, but then the question is, at National Night Out, is the only thing that's a draw to National Night Out just the fact that the town or city services are gonna be there at one central location? Because that's not gonna be a draw.
Yeah, so for all the
Oh,
polling that
yeah,
we've done, it's really about the neighborhoods getting together, and, you know, the resources secondary. So if we can have block parties still, I think they'll attract a lot of people, and then you have the consolidation with all the police resources and stuff, you get the best of both worlds.
But that's what I'm saying, so at the let's say it's Ward 5, so it's at Little Harbor School. If you're not gonna have food there, and you don't end up having music there as an example, and you don't have anything else because no one's bringing anything, it's just the police are gonna be standing around and the fire department's gonna be standing around waiting for people to come? I'm not
Well,
sure that that-
I mean,
I'll be a person, I don't know that
no,
that would be
but the
a-
expectation would be, if there's gonna be those 5 locations
Yeah.
in the 5 ward, they're gonna have all of the food, the music. Like, some people will have to coordinate all
Who's
that.
supplying that?
I think you're right. I think some people are probably gonna have to drive their food. I don't know, like, is that gonna stop people? Because you're right, if there's no food, I don't, you know,
No
that's,
food, no drink.
It would take
That's gonna-
planning, it
that's
would
gonna
take
drive.
planning by
Yeah.
committee,
But I
that's
think-
why I was asking.
yeah.
Well,
Station 2 did a great job.
yeah, for Fire Station 2, I did, I actually got a sponsor from from one of the banks, because I went out and I asked for sponsorship, or, for a donation rather. And then I asked neighbors to bring food. Not many did, but you know what? Actually, I take that back. Many people did. And thank you for your suggestion about Gather, because some people did bring some donations for Gather as well, some canned foods. But I just made sure I did the work, and I prepared a list and I invited people to help me out. And I said, bring this. I got a lot of sponsors. Donations from different organizations.
Did they walk there, or was it everyone was driving?
They did walk. We had Ocean Road blocked off. We asked DPW, and actually the state Department of Safety, they put up cones along Ocean Road so people could walk. But we had to ask ahead of time.
But an
So
example
just,
would be like
prepare.
Dondero School. Not everybody's walking to Dondero, but they have a huge party there where
Yeah.
they had a band out there. They had,
Yeah.
I mean, it was like a festival out there.
Crime Stoppers.
They're very buttoned up.
You got enough people that can coordinate it, and you know the locations. There's ways to figure out how to get
Yeah,
food and
Typically, at other
grills.
locations, people have been driving to wherever the location is.
yeah.
Okay, good to know. 'Cause obviously,
So-
with our little micro-specific location, no one drives.
Years ago, like a long time ago, Walker Bungalow and Cliff Road went across to Upper Broad Street. They actually had a block party kind of up there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That was going way back.
Yeah.
Way back.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we've been there for 20 years, and I never
Yeah,
remember it
that's what
being there.
I thought Corinne had told me
If,
that.
if you guys want to go way back, when I was a kid and Maple Haven was developed, it was based around the playgrounds, but it served the same purpose. 2 times a summer, all the playgrounds, which were in every single neighborhood, everybody went over to not South Street, the Leary Field.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was never, there were tons and tons of people there. I mean, there was no hesitation about anybody coming because we had like special or neighborhood Olympics. There was food, there was this, and there was never any issue about people not getting there. I mean, there was always a big turnout. But again, it was based, in that case, around the playgrounds. That was the center. But now schools make more sense because people who have kids usually want to get their kids involved and be part of whatever's going on at school. So I don't think it's a big obstacle for parents to try to get them and the kids to wherever that night out is. You throw in big trucks and every other thing, I mean, there was plenty of adults that are attracted to that.
Yeah.
So I think the high school would be the best place for National Night Out. Plenty of parking, all those fields, and you could do all these things like you're talking about, have a poster contest with each community or whatever you can come up with. But you can put everything there, the drones and the armor car and all of that, and people will come out for that, and whatever food, how you do it, so, I mean, that's just, I mean, it worked back in the day, and I think it could work nowadays too, because people want to do it, they're gonna do it.
And just change the whole mindset if it's not a walkable. Maybe that's one of the biggest
Yeah.
things. Of, hey, come on, but it's not a walkable. And I don't know how you present that of being in a positive.
Well, as long as
Well,
parking is
it's
easy.
not, it's separating National Night Out from
From the
block parties.
neighborhood,
From
yeah.
block parties. So you take National Night Out away from that, you can still have all these organizations. The reason I came is because I've been working with Friends of the South End, and I wanted to see how this all
Oh.
worked. I mean, I did everything with, for cleaning cemeteries and stuff like that. I mean, it was the group of people that had the mindset to do it. So, you know, like you said, maybe not every group or every Friends of whatever is that active, but the people that want to be can still have their block parties. And National Night Out comes back for everybody, not just kids, for adults.
And you don't want that to go away. Like, you wouldn't want, because usually that's a centerpiece event, is the Friends of the South End having that night is one of the centerpiece events, or, I mean, Friends of the South End has others also, but for Sherburne, that was the one event that they had to make sure everybody was together. So you don't want to take that away from those neighborhoods.
Yeah, but,
You just add
but maybe
You add to
maybe-
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah,
Well, I was gonna say, maybe that forces them to be more creative.
Yeah.
that's true. Yeah. It's good to shake things up.
Yep. Okay. Well, why don't we conclude at this point? And with any business that we had, other than National Night Out, we will handle in the next meeting.
Okay.
So why don't we just say that this meeting's over? And I want to thank everyone for coming and participating. I think we've moved the idea forward. And thank you very much, Kathy, for with your ideas, and Scott, and the two of you. Thank you very much for coming. So.
Thank you guys for donating your time to the neighborhood.
Yes, thank you everyone for coming.